Well, thank you, Jack, and thank you, Wales Tech Week, for the opportunity to speak to you. We are very excited about Bitcoin as a payment system. I've been, involved with Bitcoins for almost since the beginning, and being from an African country, seeing, how people spend money, and also, the sort of inherent problems we have with African financial systems. Bitcoin as a payment system was always, the most exciting aspect of it. And of course, now we have, all these other ideas that are coming along with Bitcoin. But we've stayed true to that idea of making Bitcoin a cash system that people can use. And so now what I want to do is just sort of show you what we've been doing for several years now, building out a payment ecosystem. Now, we do have Bitcoin SV, and of course, it was a long, hard journey to get back to the original. And everybody feels now that now that we have Bitcoin SV, it's going to be happy days, and everyone's excited, and we can continue on this vision that Satoshi Nakamoto had, where people can now use Bitcoin as a very low cost, very fast, very efficient, and a very financially inclusive payment system. This is now kind of the idea. But of course, it's not as easy as that. Having a system that can be used as cash doesn't automatically make it accessible and usable. And so Centbee's entire mission up to this point really has been to build out a payment ecosystem, because if you just have Bitcoin, that's not sufficient. What you need to have is you need to have an ecosystem of service providers, places to spend, ways of holding your cryptocurrency, and once you have all those pieces in place, then you can have a bright, sunny future where people are using Bitcoin as a cash system. And so our whole focus has been to now try and build out this payment ecosystem. And there are a number of aspects to this. What I want to show you is what we've actually done, but also while I'm showing you those various components of what an ecosystem looks like, just tell you a bit about our journey, how we approach this, and the sort of partnerships and the things that we needed to create to be able to build this very shiny ecosystem. Now, of course, Centbee, we're known for our wallet, and what we decided when we started on this journey is that we would try and build a very simple Bitcoin wallet that could be used by everybody. We had a very low bar in terms of the technical savvy that people would have, the kinds of users that we wanted to onboard into Bitcoin. And so that meant we had to think really hard about stripping out all the technical jargon and the concepts around Bitcoin that make it quite difficult for people to grasp at this stage. Especially as when we hear about people getting scammed and that sort of thing. It's important to try and create a very usable system that, although it has all the safety and the security, it also feels like a sort of application that people would be used to. If you think about social media apps and the kinds of apps that exist on people's phones. But having a Bitcoin SV wallet is only one component, and we had to start somewhere. And if we worked on ways for people to get Bitcoin, the question would be, where do I put it? And once you've got the Bitcoin, what do you do with it? So we thought, well, let's start off with this wallet. And for those people who do have Bitcoin SV, what they can do is they can download it and try it out. But they would have to now go and find Bitcoin on exchanges or from their friends and put it onto the wallet. So this is only really the kind of the one component that is required to make Bitcoin usable as cash. And the next step that we did was we decided to now think about onboarding users into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And this is traditionally quite difficult. If you think about having a Bitcoin or getting Bitcoin, you have to go to an exchange. You have to understand how exchanges work. Well, what we decided was on the first process would be to now do a bank integration. And now this is the first time that you can see when we talk about ecosystem, this is where it becomes relevant, because now we can't just build this all ourselves. We need to find those partners. In this particular instance, we have bank partners where we can now directly integrate into Centbee wallet and allow people to do basic EFTs where they can now purchase small amounts of Bitcoin and load it directly into their wallet. But this really is only useful for people who have bank accounts. And, I'm from South Africa, and, there are a lot of people here and across the continent of Africa that don't have bank accounts. And so this wasn't really something that we thought was the most important. We wanted to make a system where people could go down to their local retailer if they were buying groceries and be able to buy Bitcoin. And so that's when we decided to develop the retail or this in-store system. Now, what's really great about retailers is that they have all sorts of products and things that they sell, but also they sell digital goods. It's often you'll go down to your supermarket and there'll be some kind of counter there, and you'll be able to pay for things, pay for digital goods, also pay for your bills and that sort of thing. And so we thought, well, let's go and find those retail integration partners that provide digital goods at the moment, and let's see if we can now integrate into those and ourselves become a service provider, sell a digital good, and in this case that digital good being Bitcoin. So what we have now is we've got this barcode type system where you can now in your Centbee wallet go and generate a barcode. And this barcode is a standard barcode that most retailers across the country, obviously this only works in South Africa at the moment, although we are going to be expanding across the continent. This particular barcode provider, they exist in just about every single supermarket, and what we are able to do now is vend Bitcoin through this. And that means you can now, as somebody with a bit of cash, you can go down to your shop, if you're buying groceries, and actually now go and buy Bitcoin. And the process, is really simple. Generating the Bitcoin, you just get it scanned with the existing point of sale system. We don't have to now go and put hardware in or do any more training. The customer will come along, hand over cash, and then immediately Bitcoin will be loaded onto their phone. Now, we are in every single shop that exists across the country, from clothing stores, hardware stores, even petrol stations, tech stores. And what's really great is that we have stores in very rural areas. Now, this is important because if we want to provide a digital payment system, and that's what we want to do, we want to use Bitcoin as digital cash, we need to be able to reach across the continent and across the country. So by doing these retail integrations, it means that we can now go and provide Bitcoin load options in the most remotest places across the country. And when you look at it, when you look at our coverage, once you actually if you have Centbee wallet and you have, if you open up the map, you're going to now see that there is scarcely a location across the country that does not have provide people to be able to buy this Bitcoin. So that was the next step of this journey of creating this ecosystem, having the wallet, and then of course now going and partnering with retailers and value-added service retailers to be able to now provide Bitcoin to our customers. And so now across this country, more so than any other country in the world, you can now go into, as I said, the most rural areas and actually be able to buy Bitcoin and load up with your Centbee wallet. So it's really a tremendous when you actually see it in action. Now, what's important is that this is the sort of slip that you would get if you were to buy Bitcoin. You're going to notice that what we do is on the slip there is a support number, but also most importantly there is a name and a surname, and that's because we understand understand and respect that regulators are going to be, of course, wanting us to be able to comply with all the existing rules and regulations around digital services, and especially Bitcoin, since it's a kind of money system. And so what we do is we actually do a whole KYC process. If somebody wants to go and buy Bitcoin, we need to now get personal information. What they would do is they will provide an ID number, also a passport scan or an ID document scan or a driver's license scan, and then we can go and do that verification. And by doing that, what we can then do is we can then set limits on the user's accounts. So we can then make sure that the system can't be abused, but also now we have an identity attached to every single Bitcoin transaction. And with that identity, we can now go and do the right AML type checks and give confidence to the regulators that we are doing all the right sorts of things to protect consumers, but also to make sure that the system isn't being used for money laundering or anything like that. And by doing this, we've actually really gone a long way to make our local regulators feel very comfortable with Bitcoin as a payment system. Of course, the dominant narrative, if you look at any cryptocurrency, they're always going for this kind of anonymous type payment system. They use words like uncensorable, and it really doesn't make our job any easier, and it doesn't really do any good for the sort of greater benefit of people, because now regulators are going to be quite reluctant to allow businesses to start using cryptocurrency as a payment method. But we are trying very hard to dispel all of those myths. We obviously engage our regulators all the time. They've been with us on this journey, and we are starting to notice that of course South Africa is probably the best country for a Bitcoin company, because for many years now, even prior to me founding Centbee, I was engaging those regulators and explaining to them that this is a transparent ledger, it can be regulated, and now we can see the fruits of all that effort, by being allowed to now have these products on the market and allow people to get into that Bitcoin ecosystem. But now, I've spoken a lot about getting in, and of course, the next most important thing is getting out, and meaning, what do you do with your Bitcoin once you have it? And something we've spent a lot of time on is doing retail payments at point of sale, but it's very complicated because retailers are stuck in their ways and they have long development cycles and all this stuff. So what we decided to do is build value-added services directly into Centbee Wallet, and so this is now available in South Africa. As you can see, we've got a whole bunch of value-added services. We can now sell mobile airtime and data and electricity. Electricity is a big one because a lot of Africans use what's called prepaid or pay-as-you-go electricity. And just as a side, this is really what got me into Bitcoin as a payment system many years ago. When I first thought about, I was working in the energy industry and building vending systems for prepaid electricity for African customers. And it was always a difficult thing. How do we provide a digital payment method that's not bank tied or anything like that? And Bitcoin caught my attention, and I really wanted to get involved. Anyway, now it's the realization has happened. It's now possible to buy electricity using Centbee Wallet in South Africa. But as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of other cool things. You can now buy Uber and Netflix. You can get Steam vouchers or PlayStation vouchers. And what we're seeing now is that there's a whole lot of customers that typically wouldn't be using Uber or Netflix. Because they didn't have access to the payment options for those services. They didn't have credit cards or they didn't have bank accounts, and so they just never really bought these types of products. But what we're seeing now is that people who never were able to access these products, because now it's so easy to go and get Bitcoin, at your local store, load it onto your Centbee wallet, and then pay for data or pay for an Uber or Spotify voucher. So even my teenagers and we're noticing teenagers are really getting into this as well, because if they wanted to buy something, they would have to get their parents' credit card or something, and now they can directly spend. So it's really interesting to see once you open up digital payments to a wider market, the sorts of users that suddenly now come on board. And we're really gratified in seeing how well the uptake is. And of course now that we've created these models and demonstrated it here in this country, we're very excited now to go and expand this across other countries, specifically emerging markets. We feel very comfortable with emerging markets, and that's a place that we think Bitcoin is going to be specifically attractive. In fact, that's always been a bit of a cliche about Bitcoin and Africa, but we see now it really happening, and are very gratified in knowing that our products are being used by sorts of customers that you never really expected would use it. So that's really, really cool. Now, obviously, this is just a screenshot of showing you what it's like to buy electricity. What we do is we have a list of the utilities, the municipalities, and we do validation on the electricity meter numbers, so we can make sure that everything is right. And again, remembering that we store these transactions, and so what we can do is we can do all the right sorts of audits and analytics that are required. And now this is another thing that we have been doing. Another cliche was Bitcoin and cross-border remittance. What we started building was a remittance solution inside, as another Centbee product. We branded it as Centbee Remit, but we realized that there are a lot of users who don't want to know about Bitcoin. They don't understand it, or they are frightened by it. And so we built another product called, we branded it Minute Money. And what Minute Money allows people to do is to be able to do cross-border, but without them knowing that they're using Bitcoin in the background. And so it's a process app, and what a user will do is they'll go to one of our locations, one of those retail locations, or do the bank integration, and they will be able to put in their recipients' bank account information. We will obviously do the right sorts of checks. And then what they will do is they will then go and remit that Bitcoin to the foreign country. And at this stage, we are now operating in between the corridor South Africa and Nigeria. We'll be opening that up to Ghana, Kenya, a whole bunch of other African countries. And what happens is, though, we then do the conversion and actually deposit local currency into the bank accounts. So the customer on the other side can now get local currency out. So the process flow is really putting local currency in on one side, doing the Bitcoin remit, and then getting local currency out on the other side. Now this is really doing very well, of course, because Bitcoin is very cheap to be able to move, and also because we are now doing all the right sorts of KYC stuff, it means that we can be compliant with the money remittance rules, and also with the new regulations that the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, what they've been talking about in terms of the travel rule, knowing who the recipient is, and that we've got all that information. So it's a really exciting application, and what we will be doing now is we will be bringing that into Centbee Wallet. And so anybody in the world who has Centbee Wallet and can be able to purchase Bitcoin can then go and deposit that money into a foreign bank account using our cross-border remittance platform. So it's to me, this is now the full realization of what Bitcoin was always meant to be. It was always meant to be cash, so you can spend it. And of course, the acquisition of it, make sure that it's accessible and not just to techies. But then also, being able to now leverage that low-cost network to be able to move money around the world very cheaply and efficiently. So, we are very excited to be fulfilling Satoshi's vision of cash, and we certainly want to be able to, keep pushing this and growing across the continent, and then going out into other continents, and we can certainly see how Bitcoin is going to transform the world for the better. But I think that's all my time, and thank you very much for yours, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you. Yes, as far as a digital payment system that isn't connected to a banking system or using a credit card rail, Bitcoin is a very, very cheap, obviously, but also very inclusive sort of technology. I mean, all you really need to do is to be able to download an app, and then you can start accepting payments. Of course, the issue is, once you're in Bitcoin, a lot of people don't want to just hold their Bitcoin, especially with the value of it going up and down so radically now. So there's always going to be the need for there to be an exchange service, so you can then cash out, if you like, your Bitcoin. But in terms of the volatility, if I can just quickly touch on that, because I did see there were some questions. The value of these cryptocurrencies, I know that's not a good word, I don't like to use it, but let's just talk about Bitcoin. They're all just based on speculation. The entire industry really right now is driven by exchanges who encourage speculation. They like to have all these different currencies that people are just gambling on, and of course, there's going to be that volatility that remains until that changes and we start looking at the fundamental value of these things. And as the ecosystems grow and people find value and use in them, then there's going to be a fundamental reason to hold Bitcoin. Now, as far as SMEs are concerned, we do have a lot of informal merchants. They basically have. There's a lot of informal little sort of shanty shops that exist, and cash. Sumit, I think you were talking about the inherent value and cost of cash. Cash handling is very risky, from a security point of view, but cash handling is very, very expensive. And so giving them an opportunity to use a digital payment method that is very cheap and also, doesn't have that fraud aspect. With credit cards, you can have chargebacks and there can be disputes. So, this is something that is very, once you get over the speculative volatility, and also when you realize that there is no regulatory concern, if you can have the assurance that what you're dealing with is not going to be deemed illegal, that's why regulatory clarity is very important. Then the benefits of a cash payment system that doesn't have the same fraud issues, has very low cost, you don't need to hold cash on premises, that just becomes very obvious. So we see once we get over these short-term humps, the speculative volatility, and as regulators come out with clearer positions, we think that SMEs are going to look at Bitcoin specifically as a great way to accept cash. And also, we're looking at all sorts of other ways that people will use cash and businesses use cash. Sometimes there are reward systems, for example, and Bitcoin is a great, another great way to encourage your customers to, to come to your business, and where you can reward them with a reward system that is interchangeable, isn't locked into an ecosystem. So there's a lot of benefits, and we can see them now coming to fruition.